Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a place that rarely gets the spotlight, a fog-wrapped, wood-smoke-scented corner of the late Middle Ages. A 15th-century Ashkenazi Jewish ghetto. Picture crooked rooftops, muddy alleys, and houses leaning like tired old men. Your breath fogs in the air, mingling with the scent of onions, tallow, and wax. Chickens strut between carts. You can hear snoring through the walls. And someone, somewhere, is already arguing about fish. This is no palace. No castle. No battlefield. But it's where most of Jewish history actually unfolded, behind shuttered windows and inside cramped kitchens. It's also not particularly safe. You probably won't survive this century. To be honest. Disease, taxes, expulsions, and Christian charity make for a grim cocktail. But tonight, we're not rushing through it, we're going to live one quiet, ordinary day in the ghetto. Because even among the fear, there's rhythm. There's bread. There's music and love and the odd goat-related emergency. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning finds you cold. Not a bone deep. Romantic winter's chill, but a cramped, nose-dripping, wooden floor is ice sort of cold. You blink awake to a weak square of gray light leaking through oiled parchment windows. The room smells faintly of wax and smoke. Somewhere beyond the walls, a dog yelps, followed by the unmistakable clatter of overturned firewood. You groan and stretch, bumping your knuckles on the ceiling beam again. The mattress beneath you is stuffed with straw and sighs in protest. You pull on a wool tunic, thick but itchy, and stumble over a child's carved spinning top on your way to the stove. The fire has died to glowing ash. You poke it with an iron prong and add 2 twisted scraps of pine. A flicker. A puff of smoke, and finally a living flame. As warmth slowly returns to your fingers, you can hear them, the neighbors. The walls are thin, some of them literally shared. To your left, 2 women are already arguing about yesterday's cheese. To your right, someone is hawking up phlegm with such intensity you briefly wonder if he's exorcising a demon. Above, there's a creak of floorboards, then a spill of water followed by a very creative curse. You suppress a smile. The ghetto's waking up. The ghetto itself isn't officially called that, by the way, not yet. That word won't appear in print for a few more decades, and not here. But that's what it is, a section of town, cramped and walled. Where Jews are required to live. The town watch closes the gates each evening and opens them with the sunrise. Inside, you make do with what you have. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's not. You slip on your boots, still damp, and unlatch the crooked front door. Outside, the air hits like a slap. Mist hangs low in the alley. A wagon rolls by, its wooden wheels chewing mud. A girl with red braids chases a goose. A boy sells hot peas porridge from a wooden tub, shouting in a voice that clearly hasn't decided whether it wants to stay high or go low yet. You nod to Reb Hirsch, the butcher, who is already sweeping bloodwater into the gutter. He nods back without stopping, his eyes red from smoke or lack of sleep, or both. A cat perches on a barrel behind him, waiting to pounce on trimmings. You'd call it cute if it didn't look so disturbingly competent. Overhead, laundry flaps between houses like tired flags. Steam curls from vents in the bathhouse roof. You dodge a splash from a second-story chamber pot, close one, and duck into the small alley that leads toward the baker's, but before bread, there's something older. You turn left, toward the tiny stone synagogue tucked at the base of a leaning house. The doorway is crooked, the threshold worn by generations of soles and sandals and boots. You push through. Inside, it smells of damp wood, parchment, and sleep. A candle flickers in the rear. 2 men sit at a long bench, murmuring prayers in a rhythm that almost matches the creak of the building. One has fallen asleep mid-verse, the other continues, unbothered. A child sits cross-legged on the floor tracing letters with his finger on a dusty plank. You join the line at the back, wrapping your shawl tighter. The cantor mumbles through the morning service, voice hoarse but steady. You catch a glance from the man beside you, silent, tired, and grateful for your shared presence. Outside, the town begins to growl. Merchants shout prices. Dogs bark at carts. A bell tolls, not for you, of course, but for a church across the wall. In here, the rhythm is different. Slower. Sleepier. But no less urgent. As the service ends, you slip out. Back into the fog. Your stomach reminds you that spirituality only goes so far when you skipped dinner last night. The bakery is open now, barely. A thick woman with flour on her cheeks leans on the counter, glaring at her own oven like it insulted her mother. The bread is coarse, dark, and slightly burnt. You buy 2 loaves and haggle for a third, quoting a psalm with just enough smugness to annoy her. She rolls her eyes and throws in a lump of onion roll to shut you up. Back in the alley, the fog is lifting. You can see the outlines of the ghetto's wooden towers. The streets beginning to fill. A man limps by with a ladder over his shoulder. Someone shouts about debts. Someone else about chickens, and beneath it all, there's that hum, the low, constant buzz of hundreds of lives packed into a space meant for a dozen. It's loud. It's ridiculous. It's yours. Historians still argue whether ghettos like this were self-contained havens or open-air prisons. The truth, as always, is probably both. But right now, your biggest worry is whether the apprentice scribe remembered to leave the door open, because you're expected. And you're already late. The alley to the scriptorium is narrow enough that your elbows graze both walls if you don't walk carefully. Above you, planks jut from upper stories like the teeth of an old wooden dragon. Damp laundry droops between buildings, dripping from the morning mist. You duck beneath a sagging clothesline, sidestep a puddle of suspicious color, and find the familiar arched door, half open, mercifully. Inside, the light is dim and golden. Beeswax candles flicker in sconces, casting thin, swaying shadows across the walls. A sharp tang of ink and old parchment pricks your nose. You step inside and nearly trip over Kalman, the apprentice, who is on the floor muttering to himself while frantically blotting a spilled bottle of lead ink. His fingers are stained black. The floorboards probably are too, now, again. You ask, in the most disappointed parent tone you can muster. He looks up, sheepish. It bumped me. He points vaguely at the desk, which, being an inanimate object, isn't likely to argue back. You sigh, step around the mess, and settle into your usual seat, a long wooden bench beside a narrow window, its glass warped and bubbled. Before you lies a blank sheet of parchment, a half-carved quill, and the work of the day, copying a page from the Sefer Mitzvot Ghetto. The letters must be perfect. Not excellent. Perfect. The space between strokes. The width of each leg. A slightly crooked yud can lead to a misunderstanding. And misunderstanding Torah is a serious business. There are rules. So many rules. One letter smudged and the whole scroll may be unfit for use. You steady your hand. Dip the nib into the ink. Exhale. Then draw the first aleph. It takes time. A lot of time. Sometimes, 2 hours pass and you've only completed a line or two. But it's meditative, in its way. The strokes become rhythmic, the motion comforting. You fall into a kind of waking dream, where each mark becomes a small act of defiance, because your people aren't supposed to have this. Books, education, written memory. In many towns, these things are burned, but here, inside the ghetto walls, among the scribes and scholars. The words keep flowing. Kalman climbs onto the stool beside you, chewing on a piece of dried plum. He leans in close, too close, and whispers, "Did you hear about the dog who wandered into the mikveh yesterday?" You stifle a laugh. No. What happened? He left holier than he came in. For once. You shake your head, smiling. There's always a joke, even here. Especially here, your work continues. The letters march across the page in inky blackness. Occasionally, Kalman offers commentary you didn't ask for. That one looks like it tripped on its own foot, he says of a crooked vav. You pretend not to hear. At the far end of the room, the senior scribe clears his throat like he's trying to cough up a whole library. He wears thick lenses bound in leather frames, and his beard has its own personality, mostly grumpy. He nods toward you. Cleaner on the foot of that lamed, he says. It's limping. You nod back. There are no compliments in here, only corrections. Outside the window, the fog is starting to lift. Sunlight pokes through the gray and sets the window aglow. You pause to flex your fingers, stiff from gripping the quill. Your shoulders ache. Your back twinges. You're 27, but your spine has decided to be 82. Across the room, another apprentice is trying to mend a torn page using boiled starch and a toothpick. It's not going well. The page crinkles like old leaves, and he curses under his breath in Yiddish. You recognize a few choice words and make a mental note to avoid his repairs when possible. The scriptorium, humble as it is, hums with an odd holiness. These aren't just books, they're continuations. Every word copied is a chain in the long link from Sinai to now. It's easy to forget that, when your neck's sore and your eyes are blurred. But every once in a while, the weight of it catches you. Still, it's not all lofty devotion. Earlier this week, someone, no one's admitting who, replaced a line in a draft Megillah scroll with a verse from a wedding song. It was caught, eventually, but not before 3 rabbis sang it aloud before realizing they were praising a bride in the book of Esther. Kalman called it divine matchmaking. The head scribe called it grounds for exile. Historians still argue whether ordinary Jews of the Middle Ages truly engaged with sacred texts or merely repeated what was dictated. The truth lies somewhere between the ink stains and the stolen jokes. You're nearly done with the page when the door bangs open. A gust of cold air follows, along with Moishi the glazier's boy, panting. They're shouting at the mikveh, he says. Said a decree came from the magistrate. Something about the bread tax. Or maybe the license for ritual slaughter. They weren't sure. You exchange glances with Kalman. That's not good. Either one is bad. Both could be catastrophic. The head scribe rubs his temples and growls. Why can't they ever announce these things after Shabbat? Because of course they can't. That would be too reasonable. You clean your quill, cap the ink, and stretch. The page is mostly finished, minus a small flourish at the margin, a tradition here, never too ornate, just a modest vine or leaf. You'll save that for later. You step outside. The alley's louder now, buzzing with speculation and early panic. Someone's already ranting about relocation. Someone else blames the Polish king. A third swears it's just gossip. You don't know yet. What you do know is that the day, which began in fog and ink, is about to veer sharply into something else. But first, lunch. You're starving. The fog is gone, replaced by sunlight that's trying its best to look warm but fails to cut through the early spring bite. You pull your cloak tighter and follow the smell, onions, yeast, maybe a little burnt garlic, toward the marketplace, which is really just a widening of the alley where people pretend there's room to bargain. A cart stacked with cabbage creaks past you. 2 boys race after it, one barefoot, both shouting something about a duck. You sidestep them and nearly crash into Rivka the bread wife, who is swatting at pigeons with a broom and muttering curses in 3 languages. Her stall is crooked and lopsided, just like her grin. The loaves in her basket are dark, dense, and uneven, but you know better than to say that out loud. Late again, she says, eyes narrowing. I was praying. You were asleep in the back of the shul, snoring through Hallel. She's not wrong. You lift a round loaf from the stack, inspect it, then squeeze the bottom like you know what you're doing. Rivka snatches it back. Don't fondle the merchandise. Pick one or go away. You gesture at a slightly less charred specimen and she nods. That one's named Esther. Be kind to her. Does she come with butter? No, but if you help me chase off these flying rats, I'll throw in a burnt onion roll. You oblige, flailing your arms at a particularly bold pigeon perched on the edge of her roof. It flaps off in protest, knocking a dusting of flour into your hair on the way. Rivka cackles. Mazel tov. You're the ugliest angel I've ever seen. You hand over 2 copper coins, slightly dented, and she grumbles, but slides you a roll wrapped in old linen anyway. Tell your mother it's free today, she says, then adds, but next time, I want wax paper in exchange. You nod, accept the roll, and glance down the market lane. The crowd is growing thicker. 2 men are loudly debating whether the new magistrate's letter is a fine, a warning, or a blessing wrapped in lead. One insists it means increased grain rations. The other thinks it's a cover for another confiscation. You tune them out. The bread is still warm in your hands. You tear it gently and chew, mouth dry but grateful. A woman with a cart of used clothes stops you, offering a shawl that smells like old goat and hope. You decline. She shrugs, moves on. Her shoes don't match. At the far end of the lane, you spot Itzik the hatmaker. His stand is new, well, the wood is old, but the sign's new. It reads, now with real beaver. You make a face. Beaver fur is the height of fashion, apparently, though you suspect few in the ghetto have seen a real beaver. Still, the wealthier families, the ones with relatives in Prague or Krakow, have started flaunting little fur-trimmed caps that sit awkwardly atop otherwise ragged heads. Itzik's cousin recently brought him a shipment from somewhere vaguely east. He's milking it for all it's worth. Try it on, he calls, waving something fluffy. Guaranteed to make you look like a Polish duke. I'm trying not to get arrested today, you reply. He laughs. Then how about this? He pulls out a cap with ear flaps that look like they might try to run away on their own. Historians still argue whether Jewish communities fully adopted local fashions or simply modified them for survival, he says, in mock lecture tone. I say, if it keeps your ears, who cares what language the fashion speaks? You pass on the hat. He shrugs and tosses it back into the pile, muttering something about Philistines. As you move on, you spot a familiar face, Chaya, the widow who brews that questionable herbal tea that cures nothing but boredom. She's talking animatedly to the fishmonger, who is pretending to listen while descaling something unpleasant. You pause just in time to hear her say, and then the goat just stood there, bold as brass, and urinated on the hallah. Right on it. As if to say, this is what I think of your Sabbath. The fishmonger nods slowly. Truly a beast of discernment. You smile. You keep walking. By now, you've eaten half the onion roll and most of the bread, and your stomach is beginning to believe you might actually feed it properly today. You stop by a small table manned by a boy selling pickled cucumbers from a cracked jar. He offers you one, holding it like it's a gemstone. You take it. He beams. You hand over a sliver of coin, and he runs off with it before you can ask for change. Future merchant, someone mutters behind you. You glance back, and a familiar sight makes you blink. Moshe the furrier's son, perched on a low stool, stitching a tear in his boot with the intense concentration of a monk copying scripture. Next to him, his little sister sings off-key about soup and stars. You sit beside them on a bench that might once have been part of a door, nibble your pickle, and exhale. The ghetto's chaos is familiar, almost comforting. Everything smells like salt and smoke. The air is full of shouts and clatter and laughter and worry. Everyone has something to sell, to trade, to repair, to argue about. Everyone's looking sideways at the gates, just in case the town guard decides to remember they exist. You'd think this noise would overwhelm you. But no, it hums. It lives. It is life. An older man walks by in a fur-trimmed coat clearly 2 generations out of fashion, a child clinging to his sleeve. They're arguing about arithmetic. Another woman is weeping because the lentils she boiled all night turned to mush, and yet, even here, amid the barter and bluster, there's room for wonder. You overhear someone saying a comet was seen 2 nights ago over Mainz. Another claims it's a sign of divine favor. A third insists it's just gas and sin. The argument dissolves into laughter. The sun is high now. The mud underfoot is drying, cracking slightly, giving way to dust. It's time to move again. You brush crumbs from your lap, thank the siblings on the bench, and turn toward the bathhouse, because while bread feeds the body, gossip cleanses the soul. And there's always fresh gossip at the mikveh. The bathhouse squats like a steaming beast at the edge of the ghetto, its chimney puffing clouds into the sky that look suspiciously like burnt stew. The building itself is stone, unusual here, and clings to heat like a miser to coin. The outer walls are slick with condensation, and the wooden door creaks like it resents being opened yet again. Inside, the air is thick, damp, and fragrant, if you find boiled herbs, mildew, and very human sweat fragrant. You shed your boots and cloak near the doorway, tucking them beneath a crooked bench. A barefoot child runs past, trailing steam and laughter. From deeper within, you hear splashing, arguing, and at least one off-key song about radishes. The mikveh pool lies beyond a curtained partition, fed by a cold spring channeled through hand-chiseled stone. It's supposed to be purifying, spiritually cleansing. And it is. Once you get over the temperature, you step into the room and are hit by a gust of air so cold it feels personal. The stone floor is wet. Always. You tiptoe across it, muttering something unprintable in Ladino, and reach the edge of the pool just as Libe the spice merchant is emerging from it with a shiver and a scowl. Feels like a blessing from the Almighty, he grumbles. A very wet, very unforgiving blessing. You nod solemnly, then slip in. It's freezing. Not cold. Freezing. Like being embraced by a ghost made of knives. You gasp. Somewhere nearby, someone snickers. You submerge fully, hold for a breath, then rise, shivering, blinking, cleansed. In the literal sense, at least, you wrap yourself in a threadbare towel and shuffle to the heated stone ledge, where 6 men sit steaming like dumplings. They nod as you sit. Someone hands you a chipped cup filled with hot water and crushed thyme. You sip. It's terrible. You sip again. So, says Mendel the dye seller, the decree. You heard? You nod, even though you haven't heard the whole of it yet. Everyone's heard something. He leans closer, voice low and dramatic. Bread tariffs. New ones. They say the Christians want us to pay double for rye. Or maybe it's for millet. Either way, the Bakers' Guild is pushing it. Pushing? Someone scoffs. They're threatening to strangle us with our own aprons. Another man waves a dismissive hand. No, it's not the guild. It's the bishop. He wants a cut from kosher meat sales. Says he needs funds for church repairs. Church repairs? Someone mutters. Let him sell indulgences. We're all out of coin and patience. Historians still argue whether Jewish taxes in this era were truly voluntary levies for protection, or thinly veiled extortion with a side of torch and pitchfork incentives, says a scholarly voice, and everyone groans. It's Avram the schoolteacher, still wrapped in a towel like Socrates if Socrates smelled of vinegar and onions. I'm just saying, he adds, context matters. Here's your context, mutters the dyer. We pay, or they riot. A hush falls. No one wants to say it, but everyone's thinking it. Pogroms don't need much of an excuse. A tax increase, a rumor about blood in bread, a bad year for barley, any spark can light the fuse. You stare at the steam rising from your cup. Swirl the floating thyme leaves. Say nothing. Finally, someone breaks the silence. Maybe we should just leave. Go to Moravia. Or Venice. Mendel snorts. And what? Be a stranger all over again? Another man shrugs. Better a stranger than a scapegoat. The discussion dissolves into tired jokes. Someone insists that if we're paying the bishop, we should at least get choir privileges. Another suggests bribing the magistrate with a goose, and the goat that peed on Rivka's hallah. There's laughter. Not the belly-deep kind. The other kind. The kind that hangs in the air like fog, then vanishes. You rise, towel slipping from your shoulder. The cold bites again. You change into your dry tunic, which is only marginally warmer than the air, and tie your boots tight. The saws squelch. There's always a little water left. Outside, the air feels lighter. Not warmer, just less dense. The midday sun is higher now, casting sharper shadows. You pass a group of girls skipping rope near the well, chanting something about sour cream and frogs. A baby cries in the distance. A rooster crows, late as usual. Your stomach growls again. Not because it's empty, there's still onion roll crust in your pocket, but because something in you is unsettled. It's not just the tax rumors. It's the sense that the day has turned. The quiet morning has tipped into something else, something brittle. Like the hour just before a storm, you glance up and see Reb Tzvi, the old mohel, hobbling down the path with his walking stick. He nods to you, then pauses. "Watch the street today," he says, voice low. "I don't like how the dogs are behaving." You don't ask what he means. You don't need to. You turn toward the central courtyard. Someone's shouting. Not angry, official, you follow the noise. The courtyard is the ghetto's reluctant heart, muddy, loud, and perpetually uneven, like it's trying to shrug off the feet that trample it. Chickens scatter as you enter. Laundry lines stretch overhead like confused spiderwebs. Somewhere, a baby wails in perfect rhythm with a hammer striking wood. At the center stands a makeshift platform, 3 crates and a splintery plank. Upon it, wobbling slightly, is Gerson the butcher's cousin, who has somehow become the unofficial town crier. Even though he shouts like he's gargling salt, they say, he bellows, that by next month, all kosher meat must be taxed twice, by the council and the bishop. A collective groan ripples through the crowd. An older woman clutches her shawl like it might fly away. A man mutters, "Why not tax our shoes? Our breath? Our dreams while they're at it?" Gerson raises a shaky hand. Also. Word is, they want a license for our ritual bath. The mikveh. Paid yearly. In silver. Now that gets a reaction, you feel the tension shift. Not rise, pivot. Everyone here knows they're vulnerable. But the mikveh? That's a line. It's not just about bathing. It's purification. Birth. Death. Marriage. To charge for it is like taxing the soul itself. Someone steps forward, Shlomo the bread inspector, who usually doesn't say anything unless a rye loaf is undercooked. "This is revenge," he mutters. "We're growing. Surviving. They don't like that." A chorus of voices chimes in, "We should protest." They won't listen. They might. They might burn us. The platform wobbles again as Gerson tries to read a crumpled parchment, squinting like it personally insulted him. "The decree is still being debated," he shouts. "Which means they'll decide without us." That gets a dry laugh. Historians still argue whether local Jewish councils had real influence in city governance or were simply decorative scapegoats, like placing a candle in a rainstorm and calling it fire protection. What's clear is this: decisions about Jewish life are usually made outside Jewish walls. Someone shouts, "We should speak to the magistrate." Another yells, "He won't meet with us. He met with the goldsmiths last month." Yes, but they brought cake. Then we bring 2 cakes. You edge toward the front, where Reb Natan, the Shahat, stands with folded arms. He's quiet, which is worrying. Normally he's loud enough to compete with thunderstorms. You lean in. "What do you think?" He frowns. I think someone wants to break us without swinging a sword. That's not just paranoia. That's experience. You hear footsteps behind you, heavy, deliberate. It's the two stewards from the communal house, both red-faced and out of breath. One holds a folded document. The other carries a chicken. For some reason, they make their way to the front and hand the paper to Gerson, who reads aloud, to preserve the harmony of the realm, and ensure equal burden sharing among citizens of all faiths, a supplementary levy is proposed on non-Christian food practices and water-based rights. The phrasing is elegant. The intent, razor-sharp, water-based rights. That's the mikveh, you whisper. It's already done, isn't it? Reb Natan nods. They'll call it discussion for show. But they've already inked it. And just like that, the day changes shape again. There's no riot. No weeping. Just a pause. A thick, collective breath no one quite knows how to exhale. People begin to drift away, some toward their homes, others toward the communal house, where plans are whispered and petitions drafted and candles burned down to nothing. You remain in the courtyard for a few minutes longer, watching a child draw a Star of David in the mud with a stick. A goose pecks nearby. Life insists on continuing. Eventually, you wander back toward Rivka's stall. She's sitting on a barrel, chewing dried apricot and glaring at nothing. Did you hear? You ask. She nods. They always find a new way to say, we don't want you here. You sit beside her. A goat trots past with one shoe tied to its horn. No one stops it. Rivka finally mutters, I've lived through worse. Yeah. She nods. But just barely. You fall into silence together. Overhead, clouds gather. Not stormy. Just heavy. Tired. Then, a strange thing happens, laughter. From across the square, near the carpenter's awning, someone has started juggling potatoes. Badly. A small crowd gathers, children first, then adults pretending not to watch. The juggler is Rafi the weaver's apprentice, notorious for confusing right and left. He drops a spud. A boy throws it back. Another tosses a raw turnip. A woman gasps. Someone cheers. It's ridiculous, it's wonderful, and it lasts about 2.5 minutes before someone's mother shouts, you'll bruise the food. And the game dissolves, but you feel better, not safer. Not stronger. Just lighter. Like the world tilted for a second and gave you a break. You rise. Time for lunch. You promised your cousin you'd eat with her. And she has leaks. And opinions. Your cousin Malka lives in a house that smells permanently of boiled vegetables, second-hand books, and ambition. She opens the door before you knock, because of course she does, and greets you with her usual raised eyebrow, as if to say, finally. You haven't even crossed the threshold before she starts in, did you hear about the decree? She asks, already turning back toward the kitchen, apron flapping like a flag of domestic war. I was there when they read it, you reply, stepping inside and ducking beneath the low beam that claims a new forehead bruise every other week. Well, she says, chopping leaks with the force of someone cutting a rope to save a sinking ship, I've decided it's stupid. That'll fix it. She snorts. If I'd been consulted, we wouldn't be paying for water. Her kitchen is cramped but warm, and the table is already set with 2 bowls, 3 spoons, 1 bent, and a cracked ceramic pitcher filled with something greenish. You sit, grateful for the bench's cushion, which is really just a folded sack of barley pretending to be a pillow. I made soup, Malka announces, placing a pot on the table. With leeks, turnips, and rage. I taste the rage, you say after your first spoonful. She allows a smile, then sits across from you. Her sleeves are dusted with flour and herbs, and her hair is tied back with twine that was probably once part of a grain sack. She is, by her own declaration, a fiercely independent woman of 26, which means the ghetto is constantly trying to marry her off like she's a cabbage in need of a home. I got another proposal, she says between bites. From Beryl. The furrier's nephew. The one who named his cat Rabbi Whiskers. She nods. Apparently, he thinks that shows he's clever. I think it shows he needs to be supervised. You both laugh. I told him no, she adds, because of the cat. Because of the cat, the hat, and the fact that he says, thou, in casual conversation. The soup is better than you expect, filling, even. The bread you traded for earlier helps. You eat in silence for a while. The kind that only comes between people who've known each other since infancy and have run out of ways to surprise one another. Then Malka sighs and leans back. What are we going to do? You shrug. Same thing we always do. Wait. Worry. Pay. No, she says. We need a meeting. A real one. With the council. They'll listen? She tilts her head. They'll listen if I speak. You sound confident. I sound fed up. It's similar. Historians still debate how much power women had in medieval Jewish communities. Officially? Not much. Unofficially? Enough to terrify men who underestimated them. Malka is very much in the latter category. You help her clean up, sort of. You wash bowls while she re-explains why your technique is tragic. Then she shoves a small cloth bag into your hand. What's this? Dried plum cakes. I made too many. You never make too many. She shrugs. Consider it a bribe. I need you to deliver something. You open the sack. Beneath the plum cakes is a sealed note with wax stamped in the shape of a pomegranate. Fancy, who's it for? Reb Ilya. He's chairing the council meeting tonight. I thought he lived across the ghetto. He does. And I'm going why? Because you owe me 3 favors and I'm cashing in one. You sigh, accept your fate, and pocket the cakes. She hands you a wool scarf on your way out. It's colder than it looks, she says. And I care just enough not to let you freeze. The alley is quieter now. Lunch has taken some of the edge off the day's news. People are still tense, but less loud about it. You pass a carpenter planing a door frame that refuses to be square. A girl recites a prayer under her breath while drawing letters in the dust. Somewhere, someone is tuning a lyre, badly. You walk past the synagogue, where 2 men argue over whether the new decree violates Mosaic law or merely common decency. You don't stop. You know the answer, both. You reach Reb Ilya's home, larger than most, with actual glass in the windows and a mezuzah polished to a shine. You knock. His granddaughter opens the door. She's 8, maybe 9, and looks at you like you might be here to steal the soup. What? I have a note for Reb Ilya. She narrows her eyes, accepts the envelope like it might explode, and slams the door. Seconds later, it opens again. This time, Reb Ilya himself stands in the doorway. Tall, thin, beard like a blessed curtain, he nods. From Malka? Yes. He breaks the seal, reads the note, then smiles. It's not a happy smile. More. Intrigued, she's right, he murmurs, about what? He doesn't answer. Instead, he takes 1 plum cake, thanks you politely, and shuts the door. You turn back toward your part of the ghetto. The sun is starting its descent, casting long shadows down the alley. The plum cakes rattle in your pocket. Your stomach is full, your legs are tired. And your mind is spinning. You pass 2 boys playing dreidel in the dirt. One wins, one accuses the other of cheating, and both end up laughing. You smile, then someone calls your name. You turn. It's a man you don't recognize. Travel worn. Cloak dusty. Boots cracked. I bring news from Krakow, he says. Of course he does. The man stands in the middle of the alley like a question mark that hasn't decided what it's asking yet. His cloak is frayed, his boots stained with road salt, and his breath fogs in the air as if reluctant to hang around him for long. Krakow? You repeat, blinking. You sure you're not lost? He shakes his head. I came looking for Malka. Of course. Everyone always ends up looking for Malka. She's at home, you say. Telling leaks how to feel about politics. That gets the faintest smile out of him, just enough to crease the road dust on his face. Do you know her? You ask. She's my cousin. My name's Yona. Now you see it. The eyebrows. The way his nose tilts slightly left. Definitely family. Maybe once removed. Maybe twice and returned again for store credit. She said you were dead, you murmur. He shrugs. Close. I went east. Got sick. Got better. Got detained. Got released. Then I got smart and started heading west again. What kind of detained? The kind where you're not allowed to ask questions. Or pray too loudly. You nod. You've heard worse. You offer to walk him back, but he waves you off. I want to see it first, he says, turning slowly to take in the alley. The ghetto. Home. You let him. The wind's picked up. It carries soot and the scent of frying onions, weaving between doorways and shutters. You watch Yona step carefully. Like the street might remember him and trip him for leaving, he pauses by the butcher's stall, eyes the stained block where Reb Hirsch does his work. Then he turns to you. Still kosher? For now. He squints. I heard something. About a tax? You nod. Double levies. On meat. On the mikveh. Maybe more. He doesn't swear. Doesn't frown. Just blinks, slowly. Then, they don't want us to leave. But they don't want us to stay, either. That's the art, you reply. Making it just unbearable enough that we don't grow, but not so unbearable we burn the place down. He finally looks at you properly. Do they know? Who? Our people. The ones in charge. The council. The heads of households. The rich uncles with suspiciously young third wives. You snort. They know. And? Some want to protest. Some want to leave. Most are waiting to see if someone else solves it first. He nods like he expected that. Together, you walk. Past the candlemaker's shop, where waxy drips cling to the shutters like frozen tears. Past the boys playing marbles with dried peas. Past old Sephora on her stool, knitting and muttering blessings or curses, you've never been sure which. Finally, you reach Malka's door, you knock, she opens it, sees Yona, and goes very still. The moment hangs, too heavy for the small hallway. Then, you idiot, she breathes. I brought plague, he replies. She punches him in the arm, then hugs him, then punches him again, just to be sure. You slip away to give them space, pausing only to swipe another one of her plum cakes from the table by the door. Yona's arrival is unexpected. And yet somehow right. A ghost returned. A chapter unburned. As you make your way back down the alley, a few heads peek from windows. News travels like smoke here, everywhere and without permission. You hear whispers. Who is he? Where from? Did he bring money? Did he bring lice? You tune it out. At the square, a crowd is gathering again, smaller this time. Tighter. Focused. You recognize Reb Ilya. Malka's note worked, apparently. He stands near the well. Hands folded, nodding as people speak. You drift closer, catch snatches of the conversation. Can't pay twice for meat. If we protest, they'll shut the gates again. What about the Christian bakeries? What about Krakow? Krakow. The word stings now. You think of Yona. Of the sickness. The jails. The distance. And the fact that, despite it all, he came back here. Maybe he's not the fool. Maybe you are. Reb Ilya raises his hand. We'll draft a letter, he says, to the city magistrate. Firm. Respectful. Signed by every head of household who agrees. Someone groans. They'll use it as a list. Another adds, then we sign in code. Someone chuckles. It's a nervous, razor-edged laugh, but it's still a laugh. You step forward. We should send someone to speak with them directly. All eyes shift to you. Great. Now you're leading something, Reb Ilya nods. And who do you suggest? You open your mouth, then pause, because you realize, for the first time today, that you might be the only one foolish enough to go. I'll do it, you say. There's silence, then someone mutters, you're not even good at speeches. Then they'll pity me. Reb Ilya studies you. Tomorrow morning, he says. Go with 2 others. Malka will help draft your talking points. You nod, people begin to murmur again, softer now. Less anger. More planning, the sky has gone gray. And the light is fading. The wind carries the scent of tallow candles and damp wool. Somewhere, a rooster crows again. Still late, you head home, past the scriptorium, past the bathhouse, past the place where Gerson yelled his parchment. Tomorrow, you'll step outside the ghetto gates, and try not to drown in what waits beyond. You don't sleep well, the night is thick with dreams that feel like riddles. You're speaking, but your voice is a mouse's squeak. The magistrate wears a crown made of meat. The ghetto walls stretch taller and taller until they blot out the sky. You wake once with your blanket tangled around your legs and your mouth dry as chalk. When morning arrives, it does so rudely. The rooster crows like it's been saving up frustration all week. Someone bangs a pot in the courtyard. A baby cries. A dog barks in 3 languages. You groan, dress, and splash cold water on your face until you remember what today is. You're going outside the walls. You pack light, a crust of bread, a note from Reb Ilya. And a prayer you mangle even on a good day. Malka meets you at the alley's edge, bundled in her cloak, scowling like she's about to smite a god with her bare hands. She shoves a folded parchment into your hand. Talking points, she says. Stick to them unless they ask what you had for breakfast. Can I improvise? Only if it's clever. Or at least legally harmless. Comforting. You're not supposed to be comforted. You're supposed to represent. With that, she gestures behind you. 2 others approach, Dov the grain broker, wide-shouldered and silent, and Eliyahu the tailor, who brings the kind of optimism that suggests he's never properly stubbed his toe. Ready? Eliyahu asks. Beaming, you nod. But you're lying. The 3 of you walk together to the main gate, wooden, reinforced, and always slightly damp no matter the season. 2 guards stand there, one picking his teeth with a splinter, the other trying to look important. They eye you warily. We're here to speak with the magistrate, Dov says. He's not the talkative one, but when he does speak, it lands like a hammer wrapped in velvet. The guards grumble, consult a tiny wax tablet, then nod. One unhooks the iron bar across the gate, and just like that, the door creaks open, revealing the world outside. It's not that it's more dangerous. It's that it's not yours. The mud is different. The smell's sharper. The space too wide. Even the air feels like it's asking what you're doing here. You step into it anyway. Outside, the buildings are taller, less crooked, but colder somehow. People walk faster. Some glance your way, recognizing the long coats, the side curls, the rhythm of your footsteps. Some look through you. Others don't bother looking at all. Eliyahu waves at a passing fruit vendor. The vendor frowns and clutches his apples closer. The magistrate's house is 3 streets away, a pale stone structure with leaded windows and a door so polished you can see your nerves in it. You knock, a servant answers. Not a word. Just a look. Then the door swings open, you're led through a corridor filled with creaking wood and self-importance. Tapestries line the walls, hunting scenes, mostly. Dogs, stags, horses mid-leap. You think of your own walls, hung with prayers and cracked mirrors. You're shown into a room with long windows and a roaring fire. The magistrate is there already, seated behind a table that could double as a boat. He's older than you expected, with hair that's made its peace with retreating and fingers heavy with rings. His eyes flick across the three of you, calculating. He gestures. You sit, well? He asks. What brings the sons of Abraham today? Eliyahu opens his mouth, but you nudge him gently and unfold the parchment. You speak, clearly. Slowly. You explain that the ghetto has always paid its dues. That double-taxing kosher goods is both unfair and unsustainable. That taxing the mikveh is like taxing breathing, and that while loyalty can't be bought, it can be bled dry. The magistrate listens, his face unreadable. When you finish, there's silence, then he picks up a tiny spoon, stirs his tea, and says, I'm told you're growing. More births. Fewer deaths. It's not a question. Still, you nod. I'm also told your people trade outside the walls. Quietly. Without license. Dov stiffens beside you. We trade to eat, you reply. We bake our bread. We mend what's broken. We make do. He sets the spoon down with a click. I'm not unsympathetic, he says. But I am surrounded. Guilds press from one side. The bishop from another. Your existence, while legally permitted, has become conveniently expensive. You say nothing. The room creaks in the silence. Finally, he exhales. I will consider delaying the second tax. Temporarily. But I expect a gesture in return. Eliyahu perks up. Like what? A gift, the magistrate says, smiling faintly. Something rare. Something symbolic. You already know what he wants. A gift that says, we know our place, you nod. We'll discuss it. He waves you off. Do. Back in the corridor, the servant reappears, opening the door before you reach it. The street outside seems brighter. Or maybe just sharper. No one speaks until the gate of the ghetto is once again behind you. Then Eliyahu says, that went well, right? Dov snorts. If your idea of well includes veiled threats and diplomatic robbery, then yes. You don't answer. You walk together, past the tailor's corner, past the candlemaker, past the mikveh, where women are already gathering, heads bent in conversation. People ask what happened. You shake your head. Soon, you say. We'll explain soon. You reach the square, where children play tag with a chicken that clearly wants no part in any of this. Malka is waiting on a bench. Well? She asks. He wants a gift. She rolls her eyes. What are we, magi? Something symbolic. She thinks. I'll come up with something. You believe her. You always do. You expect the next day to bring arguments. Maybe shouting. Instead, it brings planning, quiet, deliberate, careful as threading a needle in candlelight. The council meets at sunrise. You sit in the back corner beside Malka, who's chewing on a quill like it owes her money. Reb Ilya opens with a sigh that seems to last forever. We've been offered a delay, he says. But it's a leash, not a gift. Murmurs ripple through the room. He wants a symbolic offering. Someone repeats, like they're trying out the phrase for size. What does that mean? A goat wrapped in ribbon? We sent them cake once, someone else mutters. They raised the flour tax the next week. Malka clears her throat. Stands up. Her voice cuts through the room like a clean blade. He wants to be reassured that we know where we stand, she says. So we'll show him where we stand, but on our own terms. That gets attention. We offer a Sefer Torah, she continues. Not a new one, a retired scroll. Cleaned, wrapped, respectfully presented. We say, this is our symbol. Our covenant. Our survival. If he wants a gesture, let him hold this and remember who we are. You glance at Reb Ilya. He's not blinking. Neither is anyone else. That's bold, someone says. It's elegant, another replies. And slightly terrifying. Historians still argue whether Jewish communities used such symbolic diplomacy as strategy or survival theater. Reb Ilya murmurs, almost to himself. But we know what works. The vote isn't unanimous, but it's close, and so, the plan begins. The scroll chosen is old, so old the ink has faded in spots and the parchment is as soft as leather. You help polish the wooden rollers. Malka stitches a new mantle for it, dark blue with embroidered pomegranates. The children aren't told the full story, but they're enlisted anyway, gathering ribbon, folding cloth, grinding powder for the calligrapher to reblacken key letters. The ghetto hums with nervous energy. It's not just about the scroll. It's about daring to step forward with dignity when the world expects you to crawl. The magistrate agrees to receive the gift in 3 days. That evening, the ghetto gathers near the central courtyard. Not to rehearse, exactly, but to remember. Songs are sung. Bread is broken. Stories are shared in low voices under the flickering glow of tallow lanterns. You find yourself standing beside Rivka, who's holding a small jar of pickled herring like it's her date for the evening. You think this'll work? She asks. I think it's the kind of thing that ought to work. That's not the same. No, you admit. But it's close enough. She nods. Offers you a piece of herring. You decline. Later that night, you pass by the schoolroom, where Avram is showing a group of children how to write the Hebrew letter Shin. One of them raises a hand. Why is it shaped like a crown? Avram smiles. Because even the letters remember who we are, even when the kings forget. You walk home slowly, past the dye shop. Past the alley where Yonah once cracked his tooth trying to juggle apples. Past the doorway where you used to steal glances at Malka when you were 12 and thought she was secretly royalty. Back in your room, the candle burns low. You watch the flame dance. Your fingers ache from polishing the scroll's rollers, but it's a good ache, the kind that says something matters. You lie down. Try to sleep, but your mind won't still. You think of the magistrate's eyes, weighing every word. You think of the scroll, now waiting on the synagogue's bima. Wrapped like a promise, you think of Krakow, and what Yonah didn't say. You think of survival, not just as persistence, but as a kind of quiet defiance. A whisper that says, we are still here, and in the dark, you murmur a blessing, not for miracles, just for a morning without thunder. You wake to stillness, not silence. No such thing exists here, but a kind of waiting hush, as if even the pigeons are holding their breath. Today is the day of the offering. The day you cross the line between existence and visibility. You dress carefully. Not for fashion, no one here is deluded enough to believe a wool tunic counts as formal wear, but for symbolism. Clean lines. No stains. A belt your grandfather braided from goat leather before your voice changed. Malka appears in the alley with a basket. Though she's not coming, this has dried dates, 2 sugared plums, and the good bread, she says. You're not allowed to faint halfway through. I don't faint, you murmur. Accepting the basket, you do when you're nervous and overthink, she says. So, chew slowly, talk plainly, and for heaven's sake, don't try a metaphor unless you rehearse it first. She adjusts your collar with a tenderness she immediately masks by slapping your shoulder. Then she leans close. This is not about pleasing him. It's about standing upright. You nod. Dov and Eliyahu are waiting at the gate again, each dressed in the sort of serious black that makes even friendly faces seem somber. Between them, cradled like a sleeping child, is the Sefer Torah, wrapped in blue, tied with white linen. Even the guards seem unsure what to say today. They part wordlessly, outside. The city buzzes. Carts rattle. Crows bicker on rooftops. Shopkeepers sweep their thresholds with performative vigor. And through it all, you walk, 3 figures and 1 sacred scroll, moving like a shadow against the city's busy sun. People notice, a boy points, a woman pauses mid-pastry, you catch snippets. Is that? What are they? Jews don't usually. You don't stop, the magistrate's house looms larger this time. You enter without being asked, led again by the servant who seems both annoyed and bemused by your continued existence. The magistrate waits in the same room, sipping something from a small glass. You bow, and for once, he bows back. So, he says. You bring your gift. We bring our story, you reply, and gently unwrap the scroll. You place it on the table. The room shifts. Not physically, but in feeling. It is suddenly, undeniably, a Jewish space. The magistrate approaches. Eyes it. Doesn't touch. What is it? He asks, not unkindly. A Torah scroll, you say. Retired. Sacred. Not for ritual, but for memory. He leans forward. You offer it freely. You glance at your companions, then back to him. We offer it clearly. He raises an eyebrow. This, you say, tapping the mantle with one finger, is who we are. Our law, our language, our endurance. You asked for a symbol. We bring you the root of all symbols we know. A long pause, Eliyahu adds softly. We cannot pay for the water that keeps us whole. But we can show you why we must remain whole. Dov, unusually, speaks next. We do not ask for favor. We ask for fair standing. The scroll is our covenant, with each other, and with the law. It is our evidence that we belong. The magistrate looks at all three of you. Then at the scroll again. Finally, he says, you speak with weight. He walks to the hearth, lifts a poker, stirs the fire. Sparks leap, then settle. The bishop will not like this, he says quietly. Then let him come to synagogue and argue. You reply before you can stop yourself. There is silence. Then the magistrate, impossibly, laughs, a short, sharp burst of something not quite joy. You're either brave or tired, he says. Both, you admit. He walks back to the scroll, folds his hands behind his back. This remains here. You may explain it however you wish. I will delay the levies until after winter. That's the most I can do. You nod. It's enough. He waves you off with a flick. Outside, the wind has changed, the walk back is slower. People still stare, but less sharply. A child smiles. A baker waves. You pass a church with broken shutters. A boy is mending them. He stops, watches the scroll pass, then resumes his hammering. You don't know if that means anything, but you tuck the image away. Back at the gate, the guards actually salute. You return the scroll to Rivka, who whispers a blessing under his breath. Then you, Dov, and Eliyahu drift apart. You end up back in the courtyard. Malka is there, teaching Rivka's son how to string dried apple slices. She looks up. Well? He laughed, you say. Her eyes widen. He laughed? You nod. She lets out a breath. I guess the world's not ending today. Maybe tomorrow, you offer. She throws an apple slice at you. Later, you walk past the mikveh. Women are exiting, steam curling around them like soft scarves. One hums an old lullaby. Another scolds her daughter for rushing. You sit on a bench nearby and watch the sky go orange. No victory was declared. No proclamation made. But the scroll remains. And so do you, and for now, that's enough. The next morning brings drizzle, a soft, whispering sort of rain that doesn't drench, just reminds. The rooftops glisten like they're sighing. Puddles form strategic alliances along the alleyways. Your boots complain immediately. You head to the bakery first. Not for bread, though you wouldn't say no to a sweet roll, but for news. Miriam the baker knows everything that happens before it happens. She once announced a wedding before either party had proposed. She sees you and raises an eyebrow dusted in flour. Well, well. Look who survived the magistrate. You smile. Word travels fast. Like gossip on a goat, she says, tossing you a warm heel of rye. On the house. Or under it. Depends how the taxes go. As you chew, she adds, he kept the scroll? You nod. No fires. No fines. Just rain. That's good, she says. Then, for now. Outside, the ghetto moves cautiously. Like a person recovering from fever, hopeful, but waiting to relapse, children chase one another, shrieking with glee, skirts and tunics muddy to the knees. An old man sells turnips shaped like heartbreak. Someone drops a spoon, and a boy returns it like its treasure. Life resumes, but with the softness of a lull between thunderclaps. You wander, past the schoolhouse, where Avram lectures on the Book of Judges while a girl behind him braids another's hair into knots shaped like the Hebrew letter Tet. Past Yonah, standing beside a chalkboard, sketching a map of Krakow. He's trying to start a learning circle, he says. No one leaves without knowing where they might go. Past the tailor's shop, where Eliyahu is designing a prayer shawl with hidden pockets. For emergency reasons, he explains, straight-faced, at midday, a meeting gathers in the communal house, not the formal council, but something looser. Malka chairs it anyway. Because of course she does, we need to prepare for winter, she says, gesturing with a wooden spoon she stole from her own kitchen. And not just with food. With plans. What if the decree returns in spring? What if it grows teeth? People nod, you raise your hand. We need to build trust outside the walls. Quietly. Through trade. Stories. Gestures. Like what? Someone asks, you think, maybe we invite one of them to a meal, you say. A neutral one. Bread and tea. No scrolls. No speeches. Silence, then, slowly, an older woman near the stove says, there's that apothecary. The one with the limp. He sold me cough syrup once and only charged half. Malka blinks. Did it work? No. But he meant well. A laugh ripples through the room. You add, we don't need them to like us. Just to hesitate before hating. That lands. Historians still debate whether medieval Jewish ghettos had cultural diplomacy or simply survival instincts dressed in poetry. But here and now, it feels like both. That evening, you join Yonah for tea at the back of the scriptorium. The rain has paused, and the wood smoke outside smells almost like cinnamon. He blows on his cup. You did something rare, he says. What's that? You got people to remember we're people. You smile. And you got people to think Krakow is a place, not just a word. He grins. Give it time. You sit together, listening to the creak of the rafters. Eventually, Yonah leans in. You ever think of leaving? Sometimes, you say, why don't you? You shrug. Because I know the sounds here. I know the rhythms. Even the cracks in the cobblestones feel familiar. Even when they twist your ankle? Especially then. He nods, sipping his tea. You're not afraid? I'm very afraid, you admit. I've just learned to walk while trembling. Later, walking home, you notice something strange. 2 boys playing near the ghetto's gate. One Christian. One Jewish. You pause, they're playing tag, no guards shout. No stones fly. They're just playing. You don't know what it means, but you know it means something. By the end of the week, it feels like the whole ghetto is exhaling. Not relaxing, exactly, relaxation would be reckless, but loosening, like a belt after a too large Sabbath meal. The magistrate hasn't sent any new decrees. The scroll remains untouched in its satin mantle. And the taxes, for now, sit quietly in their ledgers like well-behaved dragons. Still, you know better than to trust the stillness. So does Malka. She pulls you aside in the market square. We need records, she says, frowning at a barrel of onions as if they insulted her. Ledgers. Notes. Evidence of what's worked, and what hasn't. Like a journal? Like a blueprint. Something future fools like you can learn from. You agree, of course. Not because you love paperwork, but because you've learned that memory is slippery, and stories change in the retelling, so you begin, in the evenings, after the fire dies low and the streets fall quiet, you sit by candlelight and write. About the scroll. The magistrate. The arguments. Even the chicken chase from last week. You make it vivid. Specific. Honest, even when it's unflattering, because someday, someone might need to know what worked this time. You're not the only one writing. Yona is gathering interviews, sketching maps, and copying letters from Krakow into neat bundles. Malka's compiling a recipe book, not for food, but for diplomacy. Blend equal parts sarcasm and scripture. One line reads. Add firm eye contact. Bake under social pressure. Even the children get involved. One girl draws pictures of everyone's front doors, labeling them with flowers and tiny jokes. This one always has soup, she writes beside your house. And this one once had a goose escape. Community, it turns out, is something you can document, but it's also something you do, and so, life moves on, crooked but persistent, the mikveh leaks again. A volunteer group forms to patch the roof. The synagogue's south wall begins to lean. The carpenter sketches a buttress made of salvaged wine crates. Two boys start charging admission to their puppet show about Pharaoh and the leaks. Their Moses puppet is made from an old sock. You catch glimpses of neighbors acting like something's possible. Reb Ilya agrees to let a younger man deliver a sermon, just once. The baker's apprentice starts inventing braided shapes that resemble animals. Malka hosts a book reading. Though half the guests come for the honeyed almonds, you find yourself smiling more often, even when you're sweeping mud, even when you're counting lentils, even when you stub your toe on that one crooked step by the scriptorium door, for the 4th time this week, because something's different now. People look up when they walk. It's not all sweetness. One evening, a rock lands just inside the ghetto wall, small, jagged, and anonymous. No one's hurt, but everyone's reminded. Malka finds it the next morning, turns it over in her hand, and says, still cheaper than double taxes. She's joking. Mostly, that day, you propose a rotating watch, just to be safe. No weapons. Just eyes. Vigilance wrapped in gentleness. You take the first shift and spend it mostly talking to Rivka's brother about why roosters don't understand clocks. There are still arguments. One man insists the scroll should be taken back from the magistrate, calling the gift a surrender. Others say it was too generous. Too proud. Too public. Historians still argue whether symbolic offerings helped protect Jewish communities or simply delayed the inevitable. But in your bones, you know, the act itself, gathering, planning, standing, that was the victory. One evening, a Christian scribe knocks at the gate, politely, cautiously. He wants help identifying a Hebrew mark on a merchant's will. Reb Ilya invites him in. Offers tea. The conversation lasts 20 minutes and 3 kinds of awkward. But no one slams a door. No one raises a voice. Progress, apparently, tastes like weak mint tea and shared confusion. You end that night watching the stars from your rooftop. Malka joins you, wrapped in 2 shawls and 3 layers of skepticism. You think this lasts? She asks. You tilt your head. I think nothing ever really lasts. She exhales. Comforting. But I think memory does. And that might be enough. She tosses a pebble at you. Misses. You both laugh, softly. Below, the ghetto hums, not loud, not proud, but awake. The first frost arrives overnight, quiet as breath. You wake to windows laced with delicate veins of ice, every rooftop capped in silver. The well creaks like it's complaining about its own bones. Somewhere, a child squeals with delight at the sight of her own breath puffing into the cold. Winter has announced itself, not with snow or storm, but with the gentle tyranny of slowness. Every task now takes longer. Water resists becoming tea. Bread dough sulks in cold corners. Fingers stiffen halfway through lacing boots. You pull on your coat and begin your rounds, because somehow, this season, more than any other, makes neighbors visible. People step out to sweep their steps not because it matters, but because someone might be watching. You see Ghetto checking on Rivka's roof. You pass Yona chopping firewood for the widow Liba, who pretends not to notice but later leaves a jar of apple jam on his stoop. Even the stray cats huddle closer to the ovens now. The ghetto doesn't stop in winter, it just huddles. Moves slower. Thinks deeper, and talks more. By midday, you find yourself in the schoolhouse, watching Avram explain to 3 boys that ice is only water with attitude. One of them writes it down. For the next scroll, he says seriously, you help stoke the stove. The heat's uneven, but it's better than frostbite. A girl near the window is drawing with charcoal, something that vaguely resembles the magistrate with donkey ears. You say nothing. Outside, the market is thinner now. Fewer vendors. More bargaining. The root vegetables are stacked like reluctant survivors. Malka's there, as always, bundled and scowling at a cabbage like it owes her an apology. She sees you, jerks her head toward the side alley. You follow. I got a letter, she says, handing you a parchment. From Krakow. You read it. It's from Yona's old mentor, a scholar, half forgotten, now running a study circle in a quieter quarter of the city. The letter offers an invitation, to visit. To speak. To share what the ghetto did with the scroll. Apparently, word has traveled. Malka folds her arms. You should go. I just got warm. Go while we still have a story worth telling. You hesitate. Leaving, even briefly, feels strange now. The ghetto is rhythm, and rhythm is comfort, but maybe she's right. Maybe the story is like bread, better when shared warm, before it hardens. You promise to think on it. That evening, you gather for Havdalah, the ritual that marks the end of Sabbath and the start of the new week. The spices are clove-heavy. The candle burns 3 wicks and a little too much wax. You watch the shadows flicker on everyone's faces, softer somehow in this light. Malka sings. Yona hums. Reb Ilya holds the candle until the last prayer, then extinguishes it in a dish of wine. Smoke coils like incense. You inhale it like memory. Afterward, people linger. No one wants to leave the warmth. You tell them about the letter from Krakow. There's a murmur of interest. One boy pipes up, will you go by boat? No, you say. By donkey. He frowns. Do donkeys get seasick? Malka gently pushes him toward his mother. Later, as you walk home, you find a scrap of parchment pinned to your door. It's unsigned. On it is a single sentence. Even a borrowed voice can teach someone to sing. You stare at it a long time before stepping inside. The next morning, you wake early. Pack dried apples. Bread. Your journal. You tell Malka. She doesn't say much, just hands you a scarf she pretends not to have knitted. I expect gossip when you return, she says. You'll get more than you want. I always do. And so, you leave, not forever, just for long enough to tell someone what survival looks like from the inside. The road to Krakow is mostly mud. It hasn't snowed yet, not properly, but the frost has made the ground unsure of itself, solid at dawn, slush by noon, glue by evening. The donkey you borrowed from Eliyahu seems personally offended by every step. You don't blame it. Still, there's a rhythm to travel. A strange freedom in leaving behind everything familiar, even if only for a handful of days. The wind smells different out here, cleaner, yes, but also lonelier. You miss the smell of onions burning. Of damp parchment and soup and coal smoke curling between crooked rooftops, but you ride on. Krakow reveals itself slowly, first as chimney stacks on the horizon, then towers, then streets bustling even in the cold. It's louder here. More confident. Less curious. You pass carts laden with goods, children hawking chestnuts, and a nobleman on a horse so shiny it looks dipped in polish. At the city gate, a guard stops you. You hand over your letter, he reads it once. Then again, slower, finally, he nods. Scholars' Quarter. Follow the goats. You'll smell them. Charming, the goats, it turns out, are part of a cheese market. You navigate through, apologizing to hooves and wheels alike, until you reach a stone house with ivy strangling one side and books visible through every window. Yona's mentor answers the door. He's smaller than you imagined. Rounder. His spectacles are fogged. You're late. He says. And underdressed. Come in before your thoughts freeze. Inside is chaos, scrolls, books, inkpots, dried herbs, and a single cat who rules the room like a minor queen. You are fed tea and slightly burned pastries. Then come the questions. What happened with the scroll? Why that scroll? Why then? What did the magistrate say? What did he do? Did your people approve? Did they understand? You answer carefully. Honestly. But always with the knowledge that what you say now becomes part of their memory. You speak for hours. They take notes. One person sketches your face, another draws the scroll, not as it looked, but as they imagine it felt, glowing, humming, upright in a dark room. You don't correct them. Historians will still debate what was offered, and why, and whether the magistrate saw it as a threat, a gift, or simply paperwork. But here, in this room, it becomes myth. Later, you're shown to a guest room with more books than blankets. You lie awake on a straw mattress, staring at the ceiling, and you realize something. You're not homesick, you're playsick. You miss the ghetto, not just your house. The way the windows blink back light. The way people shout across alleys like the roofs are tin can phones. You even miss that terrible rooster who thinks sunrise is a matter of opinion. The next morning, you're invited to speak at a small gathering, merchants, scribes, a few rabbis. It's less formal than you feared. You tell them the story. You keep it plain. You describe the damp scroll, the blue mantle, the hesitation in the magistrate's brow. You don't embellish, but still, they're moved. One man weeps softly. Another offers to send candles in bulk. The next day, someone draws a map to another Jewish quarter, smaller, newer, but facing the same pressures. They need this story, your host says. You leave Krakow on the fourth morning. The donkey is less offended now. You've agreed on a rhythm. The journey home feels shorter. Not because the road has changed, but because you have. You carry more than apples now. You carry echoes. You arrive late in the evening. The ghetto is quiet, lights flickering behind curtains, the scent of lentils in the air. You find a note on your door, dinner at Malka's. No excuses. Bring gossip. Inside, her table is cluttered with books and bread and two half-knitted scarves. She ladles stew without ceremony, so. She asks, you smile. They listened. Of course they did. You're annoying, but compelling. You sit, eat, share. Everyone said winter would quiet the ghetto. But this winter, it hums with new knowledge, of its own strength. Of its own story. Of the way a scroll, carried carefully, could reshape a conversation. That night, you step outside just before sleep. The stars are sharp. The air is clean, and the ghetto, sleepy, uneven, slightly ridiculous, is still standing, still whispering, still waiting. You wake to snow, not the impatient slush of late autumn, but true snow, thick, generous, quiet as confession. The rooftops have all vanished beneath it, like someone's dropped a sheet over the world. Even the loudest alley now whispers. You open your window. The air bites your nose, then retreats. A child squeals somewhere nearby, and you hear the unmistakable thud of a well-packed snowball. Winter has finally arrived, and no one is ready, but everyone pretends to be. You dress in layers so numerous they squeak when you walk. Malka's scarf makes you look like a modest bear. But you step outside anyway. There are errands to run, scrolls to sort, and one very enthusiastic group of children who insist today is the perfect day for building the first kosher snowman. Their design includes a beard made of twigs and a tiny parchment tucked into its snowy waistband. It's a scholar, one of them explains proudly. But cold. You spend the morning helping at the synagogue, patching a draft with waxed cloth and muttering blessings that may or may not be real. Rivka arrives with a tray of dried fruit and advice no one asked for. You take both, the conversation drifts, someone brings up the scroll again, not with anxiety this time, but with pride. I heard the bishop's nephew saw it, a young man says. Said it made him feel watched. Good, Reb Ilya replies. It should. By midday, you're seated with Yona and Malka in the community house. A kettle sings nearby. The windows frost, but the room stays warm with candlelight and the heat of stories well told. We've started copying your journal, Yona says. Malka's added footnotes. Extremely helpful ones, she adds, smirking. Like, this metaphor is questionable, you roll your eyes. I'll return the favor. She waves a mittened hand. I look forward to your inevitable pamphlet, Diplomacy for Stubborn People. Outside, children pull each other on wooden sleds. One hits a cabbage cart. Laughter ensues. The cabbage does not recover. You look out the window and catch sight of a guard, yes, that guard, standing just beyond the wall. He's watching the snow fall. Not suspiciously, not angrily, just watching. Malka sees him too. He's been there every morning, she says. Just stands. Then walks away. Maybe he likes the quiet. Maybe he likes not having to explain why things didn't burn. A long silence settles over the room, then Yona says, I think he's waiting for spring. You nod. So are you, because spring means renewal. Risk. Rumors. It means new decrees, or no decrees. A visit from the bishop, or a silence so long it starts to creak, but for now, it is winter, and winter asks different questions, like, how do you store stories in snow? How do you carry warmth between people who may never understand each other, but share the same cold? As the light fades, you walk to the edge of the ghetto, where the stone gate holds its own breath. You place your hand on it. Not to open it. Just to remember it's there. You close your eyes, you hear singing behind you, faint, off-key, lovely. It's a lullaby, Malka's voice, joined by others. You do not move. The snow falls softly, covering yesterday, outlining today, promising nothing but this, that you are still here, that you are known, that in this crooked, stubborn place, someone dared to offer a scroll instead of silence. You breathe in the cold, and then you turn back home. So now, dear listener, we soften the pace. The streets are still, the candles have burned low. And the gentle hush of snow still lingers in the corners of your thoughts. Close your eyes if they're not already, let your breath slow. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Again, picture the ghetto not as a prison, but as a heartbeat, slow, steady, persistent. Imagine each uneven cobblestone as part of a lullaby. Each whispered prayer, each joke muttered over lentils, each stitched thread in a too warm scarf. All of it quietly weaving a place that refused to disappear. You are walking those alleys now, aren't you? The snow crunches underfoot. The shutters rattle gently. Somewhere nearby, someone hums an old tune. And ahead of you, yes, just there, is a little boy building a snow scholar. He waves. You wave back. You're not cold, you're not afraid, you're just here, and soon, as you step through the gate in your dreams, you will carry with you a small bit of that stubborn quiet. That gentle strength. That story held in a scroll, offered without apology. Let it settle deep into you. You are safe, you are still, you are wrapped, like that old Torah, in memory and care, and now. Nothing more needs to happen, only stillness, only breath, only sleep.